because the model for establishing parental alienation, what we call the Baker model or the five-factor model, is really built on child under 18 to parents doing, involved, sort of a more typical scenario. So if you want to establish it in court or look at the research, that's what the research is focused on. If you're going to get into like coercive control, I think there's other research that would be more relevant.
Very interesting. So you mentioned the Baker model, which I assume then is some type of model to show the evidence in court that parental alienation is happening. Can you walk us a bit through that model? I think parents would be
Sure.
really interested.
The first thing I want to say is when this starts to happen to people, and if they're going to court or thinking about going to court, and they Google, why does my child hate me all of a sudden, and they come across parental alienation online, I think that's a very powerful moment for people because it's kind of the first time they figure out like I'm not crazy, I'm not the only one. There's a name, there's a pattern, there's a model, there's data, there's support groups, there's people who can help. I'm 100% down with that. The caveat that I have is not every case of PA needs to talk about PA in court. We
Mhm.
do have a model, and I'm happy to go through it. It's my model. I love it. I believe in it. The research is there, but that doesn't mean it helps to talk about it in court. There's a lot of things when you go to court. You could ask for reunification therapy. You could ask for supervised visits. You could ask for sanctions against the other person. You could ask for a modification of the parenting time. You could talk about enforcement of the parenting time, et cetera, et cetera. There are only some of those situations where you even need to talk about parental alienation in court. If you do, then talking about the Baker model is the way to go. But that doesn't mean every time you go to court, you need to throw out there, this is parental alienation, because that has many, many, many downsides to it. So it really has to be essential for the judge to believe it's parental alienation for you to get what you want in court. And there's lots of things you can ask for where the cause of the rift between you and your child is not relevant for getting the judge to give you what you want. So the Baker model, there's 5 factors. The first is really a precondition. We used to call it the 4-factor model, and somebody convinced me to call it the 5-factor model by making the precondition the first factor. And I still sort of am a little annoyed with myself for agreeing to that. The first factor is the precondition. There's a breach in the relationship. Otherwise, you wouldn't be talking about it's the other parent's fault, right? You wouldn't have to be talking about what's the explanation for the breach. And that's why, to me, it's really a precondition. And it's the only factor that everybody agrees on. There's never a dispute about whether there's a problem. It's just what's the cause of the problem. So the second factor is that there was a prior positive relationship between the now rejected parent and the child. They put in their time. They, loved the child and had a relationship with the child. It shows that their parenting capacity is normative, that there was an existing relationship. Like I had a case once where somebody was basically out of the child's life for their first 11 years, comes back. I think they were in jail maybe, but I'm not sure I remember. They come back, they want contact, the child is resistant, and they're like, oh, it's alienation. And so that doesn't meet my criteria. That would fail at factor 2. There was a breach, but so it went through factor 1, but factor 2, it bombed out. There was never a relationship. Factor 3 is absence of abuse or neglect. That means that the now rejected parent didn't do anything that would cause the child to realistically reject them. And, there's a lot of clinical data and research data that shows that many, 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 many abused and neglected kids beaten, molested, etc., still want a relationship with the parent who did these terrible, terrible things to them. But if a child was beaten, molested, abused, and did not want a relationship with that parent who did those terrible things to them, we would not call that alienation. That would then be estrangement, realistic estrangement. So that's a case that would bomb out at factor 3. Yes, there's a breach. Maybe they had a prior positive relationship, but then the parent does something terrible, bombs out, does not meet the model. Factor 4 is that the favored parent has engaged in many, there's no hard and fast number, many of the 17 primary parental alienation strategies. That list of 17 behaviors is represents the accumulation of lots and lots of different research studies of interviews of adults who lived through this as kids, parents currently living through it, surveys, etc., focus group, like the whole thing, lots of different types of research, qualitative, quantitative. We boiled down all the bad things a parent could do to turn a child against another parent into this list of 17 things. And you have to be able to show that the other parent did these things in order to say that alienation is occurring. You can't just say, they must be doing it because my kid is mad at me all the time. You have to show the screenshot, where the parent says, remember, that other parent is an idiot and you don't have to listen to them, or something like that. And there's 17 different things that a parent could do. And then the fifth factor is that the child is exhibiting all 8 of the behavioral manifestations of alienation. These come from Dr. Richard Gardner's clinical observations, but have been supported now through research. And those 8 behaviors are different than behaviors that abused kids show towards their abusive parents. So we actually did research asking clinicians who work only with moderately and severely abused kids and ask them, do your clients behave this way towards the parent who abused them? And we gave them lots of behaviors, and they basically sorted into the alienation behaviors, and they said, nope, 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 they don't do these things. And then other things, yep, they do these things. So that's the model. And the nice thing about the model is it takes behavior from each of the parties into account: the rejected parent, the favored parent, and the child. And they all have to line up to say that a case is alienation.